I've been running around the whole hall to go check out everything going on, checking out the top tables, then went out over to the prize wall. We had a lot of fun here in Turin. My name is Mike, I'm here with Shay. Shay, we are about to go into those big rounds. Yeah. And it's all starting to get a bit tense, as you know, everyone's trying to get those big CPs. Now we're about to see who's going to be making it. What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, I think Fabio just done really well. So I think he's almost guaranteed at this point. You know, I think there's been some news knocking about as well, you know, via Leon, who we had on stream earlier. So it's anyone's game, to be fair. There's a lot of spice kicking about, and it could go anywhere, to be honest with you.
Bit of a local hero, Fabio. Went over and met another Fabio in the prize wall area, and the moment I mentioned Fabio, he was like, "Oh, Fabio!" And it was a lot of Fabioing, and we had a lot of fun over there. It seems like a lot of these Italian players are doing quite well. I'm seeing a lot of names in those top 12 tables.
Which is nice to see, you know, when you got your hometown region. It's always nice to see the local players, you know, sort of have a semi-takeover, as it were, and sort of stamp their authority on the event, being like, yeah, that was our one Italian regional, and maybe an Italian player will take it all home. I would imagine that would be a nice patriotic feeling.
It would be. I mean, we had a lot of the Polish players do quite well since Warsaw. We had a Polish winner, not at Warsaw, but afterwards, who's doing quite well here. Mateus is in a good spot. And then we've also seen the Scandinavian players doing well at the Scandinavian event. It wasn't quite their home ground, but it was their closest event with the double finish final in Malmo. So we're seeing a lot of the local players popping off.
And that's some things you love to see. I know when I get the chance to play in the hometown, whether it's EUIC or Liverpool, you always try a little bit harder.
We won't talk about EUIC though.
No, don't talk about EUIC with me. No, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about some other events that we did cover. So I think we have some graphics lined up, and I think our first one will be Bochum, I believe.
Bochum. So I wasn't at Bochum. Were you at Bochum?
I was at Bochum.
Oh, I guess you could tell us all about Bochum then.
Yeah, so there was Bochum. This was within the Silver Tempest format. You know, very strong, where Lugia started to, you know, put its stranglehold on the format. And yeah, Lost Box was, you know, getting that second place. Guja was still knocking about. Vault. And what do you remember much about the Silver Tempest format, Mike?
Well, I mean, this was when people was trying to work out new strategies to beat Lugia, wasn't it? And Gudra had shown some light with Stefan at Liverpool, which allowed people to realise, actually, do you know what, this is quite a good deck into Lugia.
Yep.
And then we saw Vault starting to find popularity. Was this around the time that the Archeops was starting to come in, maybe?
But the Archeops isn't in Lugia?
Not the Archeops, the Aerodactyl, the other fossil.
Oh, yeah, in the Vault, yes. Yeah, that ancient star to turn off wallbox abilities and all that, yeah, definitely.
No, so this was very representative of the time. You know, Silver Tempest was dominated by Lugia. We're still seeing a bit of Lugia. I know there's a Lugia on one of those top tables. I saw it. So there is one about, but definitely being pushed aside by the stronger legendary Mu VMAX at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the Lugia in Silver Tempest was a different animal. Powerful energy, Aurora energies, all knocking about, meaning, you know, Amazing Rare Raikou, Tempest Dive started taking one-shot Stoutland. Remember the Stoutland? How dangerous that could be?
With the powerful colourless. Yeah. That was scary stuff. And we don't know what the special energies of the future will look like, but Lugia's always going to be looking for new special energies to integrate in. And at the moment, we've got that single strike package. It'll be interesting to see whether that changes in the future. We know that there's potential for other combinations with the Lugia, so I'm sure Lugia is one to watch for the rest of its time in Standard.
Yeah, if you're a Lugia player, anytime you see new cards being revealed, you have to always see, is it a special energy? What does it do? Because you know the Archeops were able to fling them straight into play as early as turn 2, so I definitely want to keep an eye on, because you know if there's any special energy that is remotely good, you know, Lugia just gets a step up in power level.
100%. But here at Turin, we've seen a lot of Mu VMAX on those top tables. A lot of Lost Box too. We did just see a Lost Box do well against one of its tougher matchups, the Rapid Strike Shifu Inteleon box. And with that matchup, it showed the power level of that early flower selecting, being able to get to Mirage Gate and having those big, powerful spikes in power with Sky Seal Stone.
Yes,
you know, there's the speed at which it can get set up is so good, and the same thing is true of Mu VMAX. And it's all about consistency in this format. You know, just after you have a rotation, consistency cards are key, and the Lost Engine and the Genesect Engine are so powerful.
Yeah, both been put on full display, and I do believe in our next round we're going to be seeing at least a Lost Box via Pedro Torres. I believe we have him for our winning in scenario. And it must be said, if you are in a winning in scenario for top 8, and you see you've matched the one and only Pedro Torres, I'm thinking, right, this is going to be an uphill struggle.
Especially one of the best Lost Box users we've seen since it came out was playing it at Warsaw, one Warsaw with Lost Box, and that was just pure like understanding of the deck as soon as it came out. And when you start to see the Lost Box played now, it's changed a lot. But that early understanding of the deck just allows for those flower selecting to be done smoother, the pacing of the deck and knowing when to attack, when to slow down, when to spread and everything. It just comes with that intuition of a Lost Box veteran.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the massive strengths of Lost Box is that inherently you've got so many different strategies. You have early game tempo via Cramorant, you've got spreading damage via Sableye, and Moonlight Shuriken if you're that build. Radiant Charizards are very strong one-prize attacking option, or you start utilising some two-prize Pokemon as we saw in the last round and start swinging with Dragon Gales or Raikou, you're hitting for weakness. And yeah, that's what the Lost Box deck is so strong. There's so many different options and forces. But Mike, if I had to ask you what your favourite Lost Box variant is, what would you say?
Well, right now I've been enjoying the Piotr variant. And
of course.
The one that's just single prize only, has a Zamazenta in there. It's quite good fun against Gardevoir, just because a lot of my local players do play Gardevoir. But other than that, it does lack the power spike of the builds that have V Pokemon in. So I think if I were to switch over now, I'd probably go into that Turbo build that we've seen do so well here. Extra switch outs, Forest Seal Stones, Lost Vacuums. That seems to be the one that's coming through here in Turin.
Yeah, there's something to be said for being able to end games as early as turn one. We saw when Bolly was on stream. That's exactly what happened. But like I said, here is one of our participants here in our last day 2 Swiss round for winning for top 8, Pedro Torres.
He's quite good, isn't he?
Yeah, look at this. There's top 4s all over the shop. Top 4s ICs, one an IC, all kind of ICs, as long as that top 4 World Championship as well.
You know he's good when there's no regional results on there, because he's won regionals.
That's a good point.
And when you're that good, your top 4s at ICs are more important, and World Championship, of course, there. So a regular IC top 4er. And the other thing is what I think that's fair to say about Pedro is very good at recognizing the most effective way to play a deck as soon as it comes out. And that was why he was so good with Lost Box early on. Very good with the post-rotation Lost Box when we saw that at EUIC. Good at mastering the list early.
And that's where the early formats can really reward good deck builders. His opponent, though, is Dario. Good friend of mine, actually. Well, look at these finishes as well. Nothing to slouch at. Top 8 Malmo, top 16 Lille. Well, lower top 16s, actually. And a top 32 at Liverpool. No stranger to these top stages. And hopefully, depending on how this game goes, he might be able to add a top 8 notch to his belt.
And as we said, Lost Box and Mew VMAX is everywhere right now. And what better way to show it off than a Lost Box versus Mew VMAX match right now on stream. And who's going to be going first here?
I believe Dario is going first from what I heard. So that would mean Mew VMAX. It is a disruption build of Mew VMAX as well, I should say. There is no fusion energy knocking about. But here we go. Looks like the players are getting their starting hand here, Mike, to get ready for our winning in for top 8. Here we go. The winner most likely will find themselves in the top 8 and being able to try and take down this whole special event here in Turin.
And this is where it starts to get really tense, as to these players know this is important, and it comes with that experience. Pedro is used to being at this stage. This is not an unusual scenario. I mean, the pressure is still there, but for those regular winners and top 8ers, this is just another step as part of their normal road to victory. Whereas on the other side, Dario, this is definitely on the top end of his performances. He's going to be looking to try and create a new achievement in that achievement block for himself. And starting with the Genesect and seeing what they can do with Mew VMAX here. So Mew VMAX has shown exactly why it's one of the best decks in the format right now.
Yeah, there's something to be said for just setting up, you know. Genesect allows you to set up most of the time. You draw up to 6 cards with 1 use of the ability. Bear in mind, you can play 4 of these, so you can draw up to, what's that, 6, 12, 18, 24 cards a turn under perfect scenarios. And there's just something to be said thinking, right, I'm going to get in every game, most likely, right? I'm going to limit your hand size, limit your abilities, and take a prize card, at least 1 prize card every turn. And that's why here we see Mew still being able to navigate through Path to the Peaks in Drapion as well.
I mean, the day I realized Mew VMAX was unbelievable was when I was playing double Drapion in my deck, and I still lost.
Yeah.
And that's when you recognize a deck is very good. And on the other side, the Charizard build of Lost Box is going out of favor a little bit. It's definitely got a lower power spike compared to the other Lost Box variants, ones with the Greninja, can be a little less consistent, but that's where the decision-making of Pedro allows him to make those correct flower selectings more often and find those victories.
Yeah, I feel as if Sablezard, it's definitely the least glamorous version of Lost Box.
That's true.
Like, you know, it's not really doing anything crazy. It's not, you know, turn 1 Dragon Gale or turn 1 Moonlight Shuriken or Aqua Storm at the end of time, at the end of the game, I should say, for 500 damage total. But what it is, in theory, is the most consistent. You know, you're managing to be able to play stuff like Pokegear, Magma Basin, or in Pedro's case, even a copy of Pidgeot and Mawile to potentially get some deck out strategy wins as well.
Yeah, you say about the consistency here, and that's where some people go down that Sablezard route and they start chucking in things like cross switches, which can be a bit inconsistent, but Pedro here's not going for that.
Yep.
Looking to just play some more of the cards like Pokegear and has access to that Forest Sealstone Pidgeot combo, which can be a really good way to add more consistency too, and even be quite good in the mirror to be able to sponge a Cramorant hit early on.
Yeah, I love the Pidgeot Forest Sealstone combo because it gives one prize deck the ability to use Star Alchemy without having a 2-prize liability on the board. I'll let you into a little secret here, viewers and Mike. Snorlax Cherrim at one time did have 1 Pidgeot and 1 Forest Sealstone and 1 copy of Arvin, so you could have the similar effect, but unfortunately I didn't have the deck space, I had to take it out. But in this deck, Pedro Advantage, I think at EUIC as well is a good effect.
Snorlax Cherrim. Haven't seen that in a while. There's a good reason for it, Shay, because it's not one of these two decks. These two decks show you exactly how to play the game effectively right now. The amount of consistency we see from Lost Box and Mew has been so key to their success as of late. And I guess the versatility within the list, because you have consistency built into the Pokemon you're using, it's a lot easier to put those utility trainers in that can give you power spike turns.
Yeah, whenever, like you said, all the Pokemon you have to run, like Comfey, like they draw you cards, right? And then it's worth running them in such high counts and you get to those increased numbers of Lost Zone faster. And also, I think Sableye just spending 12 damage counters is just a ridiculous amount when you realistically think about it. Over to Dario, though, his turn's been going really well, you know. Got 5 Pokemon in play, I should say. Multiple Mews, got an energy. Has led a Genesect, though. So it could be hard to get that out the active. We'd have to play a switching card for that. But all things considered, if this is a win in for top 8, I wouldn't be moaning too much about the start.
Yeah, with the Genesect, that's something to note here that's quite important, is the strategy for Pedro into Mew. There is the Drapion, and so that is a potential big knockout on a Mew VMAX. But outside of that, they're going to be looking to either get the second Mew VMAX with the initial Drapion, if that's the case, or they're going to also look to spread on Genesect. It depends on how the game pans out at first. So having a Genesect starting the active spot to be a free knockout could lead Pedro down to a different route of attack. Yeah,
and I've actually, when I played Mew myself, I always found Sablezard to be a really hard matchup because the Charizard hits Genesect for weakness, so it actually gives the deck, outside of Drapion as well, another option to take big multi-prize KOs with a 1-prize attacker. And that's one thing that Disruption Mew really doesn't deal with well, is 1-prize Pokemon that can take 1-shots and have a fairly high amount of HP. Yeah, with the Genesect, if you get a Cramorant hit on it, it's then in range of a Sableye to be able to take out the next turn. But the downside of that is that you're then committing down a 2-2-3 line or a 2-2-2 line, which can be a little bit tougher to get through. The ultimate strategy, the planned strategy here for Pedro will be to use that Drapion twice as early as the first time we see a Mew VMAX, and that's where Dario has to start thinking about those Psychic Leaps. Psychic Leaps and Path to the Peak as well to be a nice soft defense against the Drapion, right? Because there is no Lost City being used here. So, wow, over to Pedro's side of the board, though. Hand was looking fairly decent, you know. Trying to see what's going on. So, Comfey, I think was that a Nest Ball, a VIP Battle Pass just being used there.
I mean, it's only going to get better, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the card advantage you get through those flower selectings. We'll be seeing lots of new cards available soon.
Let's have a look. So, Comfey. Here we see, 3 Comfeys in play, reminiscent of what Bolly was doing earlier, almost getting 4 Comfeys in play. There we see a switch card. So it should be, is it 3 in? No, 2 in the Lost Zone? No, it is 3 in the lost zone now. Pokey gear, there we see the increased consistency that Sableye offers, and look what it finds. A Colress experiment. Pedro is firing on all cylinders here.
Yeah, you rarely see Battle VOP pass go into the lost zone on turn 1, but in this situation, so important to get a Colress. That added 2 into the lost zone is vital to get close to Sableye as soon as possible, and also thin the deck as much as possible to decrease your disruption later on from a judge path play.
Oh, there we see an Echoing Horn getting sent to lost zone. That's an interesting card that, you know, a lot of lost box decks tend not to play just because of deck space, but Sableye having that increased deck space over Mirage Gate lets you play those interesting cards.
I guess there's a few decks right now that have 60 HP Pokemon.
Yeah.
You know, like you can imagine with a Gardevoir, if you're able to get a situation where you can get double knockout with Sableye, and obviously the Horlucha in there too, so you can even get the 70 HP Pokemon. So Echoing Horn can create some interesting turns and also get a V Pokemon back out for a Charizard knockout too.
Yeah, well, we saw it in the last round, didn't we? Echoing Horn to KO the Remoraid twice. Oh, was that an escape? Was that an escape rope? I'm guessing. Yeah, escape rope. Oh, what do you promote here? Do you set your draw engine, and you'd rather Mew take the hit because you can evolve it, I guess, and Psychic Leap it away at some point. But anything for Pedro, you can't really ask for much more than that turn 1. 5 in the lost zone and spit innocently as well.
It's all about thinning the deck at this stage for Pedro. Wants to set up a post-Drapion state. Want to make sure you get that knockout with the Drapion and are able to set up for the strongest scenario. Now we see the judge reset the hand growth of Pedro. You know, typically Lost Box will get massive hands through the card advantage gained through flower selecting, so just wants to make sure the decision making is reset and makes harder flower selectings after this shuffle here. But yeah, Judge has been so effective in this meta.
Yeah, it's an interesting card, Judge. It has been around for a long time, had many prints. There we see Dario using the Heart Gold Soul Silver print. Very nice, might I say. But yeah, really good defense against Lost Box decks who, if you let their hand run amok over the course of the game, can get ridiculously high. Judge resets it.
So for you, what do you think the most important play here is for Dario? Do you think early on, just trust that the Drapion's not going to be available, or just only leave 2 prizes in play with a Psychic Leap?
I think early on, you can afford to take the risk as the deck is rather thick. You know, Lost Box decks can struggle to find Pokemon. Only plays 4 copies of Nestball and Battle VIP Pass as the main Pokemon search. Battle VIP Passes aren't live anymore. We already see a Colress in the discard pile already. So this is where I think I'll be hedging my bets, because you can't Psychic Leap a Cryomant for a KO, unfortunately. So I take the risk here of a Techno Blast and hope that Drapion doesn't come down.
Yeah, we see the Feather Ball there being used. The big advantage of Feather Ball over something like a Nest Ball can get you the Mew and the Mew VMAX, but you can also play it for nothing, so you can get it out of that hand.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, because when we got into this new post-rotation format, a lot of people were playing Nest Ball at a 4 count, but cards that you can't always play are the worst cards in Mew, because sometimes you need to just get your hand down with cards like Cranmatic, for example, and there are times where you can't play Nest Ball, and
that's a
good roll. That was a good roll, wasn't it? Yeah. Nice and dramatic there.
Gets on the edge of our seat, but not the worst case scenario at this point, because the best factor of Chromatic is thinning your deck, but it does mean you're going to have to dig for that path to the peak, which I assume would be a plan at this stage to avoid a Drapion attack next turn.
Yes, that's a good point. If you can find path to the peak, that gives you another answer to the Drapion there as well. Looks like we don't see any path to the peak there, though. See a Boss's Orders, which can't be used. There was a Judge used this turn. So let's see what Dario can manufacture.
Got to be careful with that path to the peak as well. No V-Star available anymore. Needs to have a Lost Vacuum in hand, otherwise could potentially disrupt themselves. As path to the peak doesn't particularly disrupt Pedro's deck on its general workings, but it's all about that Drapion to stop it from being able to attack.
Speaking of path to the peak.
And the Lost Vacuum.
And Lost Vacuum. The 2 cards you really want to see is a Destruction Mew player just coming up there. Nice and easy. That nice gold artwork as well. Stunning, you might say. But rather annoying a lot of the time if you see it in play as well. I think this turn's gone pretty well for Dario, all things considered.
Yeah, very solid turn. I wonder if the Psychic Leap will happen. Yep, Psychic Leap.
Oh, we do.
Gets the knockout. There was a Power Tablet played, not only to thin the hand, but to increase that Psychic Leap damage from 50 up to 80. So that will... Maybe there was another Power Tablet used earlier on, so...
Yeah, there must have been.
Got up to 110. So
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. If the 2 power tablets was used, then yeah, Psychic Leap's always the correct play there. So that's just making Pedro answer a lot of questions. So now if you want to use a Drapion, it's not taking 3 prizes, which is fine by me, and you have to replace the stadium. And Dario promotes a free retreat Pokemon as well. Let's see how the judge treated Pedro then. So you have a Fog Crystal, Nest Ball. Okay, so Path to the Peak being huge there.
yeah, that's going to make it tougher now, but some of those cards will thin out cards, so making those flower selectings potentially better and also creating more options later on. It's tough though, you know, these are the decisions which separate the likes of Pedro from your average player. They'll be able to think through every scenario here and work out what the best outs are. In terms of stadium bumps, what have we got on the side of Pedro? There seems to be 3 stadiums and a Lost Vacuum.
Yes, so 1 copy of Magma Basin, 2 copies of Beach Court, and like you said, 1 Lost Vacuum as well. Magma Basin is really good for getting your Radiant Charizard roll, because it lets you get a fire energy from a discard pile, attach it to one of your bench fire types, and then Beach Court obviously giving basic Pokemon 1 less retreat. Perfect to use with Comfey.
So that Cramorant's coming down just to try and get some more damage potentially on board. There's a Beach Court there, so the Forest Seal Stone, the one of Forest Seal Stone will be removed, but needs to have those stadiums, cannot get rid of any stadium for free, needs to use it to get rid of the path, and that's the Charizard and the Drapion there.
Oh my goodness gracious me! Someone screenshot that. That's going to be a meme. We're going to see on social media now. That's the problems of playing flower selected injet. This will happen. It even shows. I'll tell you what, if I was Dario there, I wouldn't be checking my head. I'd be like, yes, that's what we want to see. You don't get bonus. You don't get bonus points for winning easy games or hard games, I should say. I want them to be easy. And the Radiant Charizard.
You have to
go down.
You have to. The route to victory here is you've got to hope there's no Lost City on the other side available for Dario, and that you can go down the double Drapion attack route. But not only is the Drapion going to be needed to knock out the Mew VMAX, but they have to gust that Mew VMAX up anyway.
Yeah, I can't get over how bad that was. The more I think about it, like I said, Drapion is probably the correct choice because it has the option to one-shot Mew VMAX at any time, well, without Path of Beat being in play, but Radiant Charizard is also very good. So now Pedro is playing Sablezard deck with no Charizard, so he's playing Sable.
Sable Drapion.
Sable Drapion, that is what we're playing, yeah.
I mean, this is a tough situation because you ideally, now you know the Drapion's there, you need to disrupt the hand. You also need to get rid of this Path to the Peak with the Lost Vacuum in hand. So there's lots of things to think about at this stage. There's also the potential to leave only 2 prizes in play with a Psychic Leap from that Mew VMAX. Not now, now there's 2 in play, but you can always promote a 2-prizer, forcing the Gust plus Drapion play. So it's going to be tough as well to get the Psychic Leap off on the Cramorant, because as we mentioned, 2 power tablets were needed last time. One of those is in the prizes. So there is no way to get that knockout in the Cramorant with a Psychic Leap. So lots to think about here.
It's interesting because Pedro showed Dario the flower selections. Dario now knows that the Drapion's in hand. So I mean, there is a judge there, so you might even see a little bit of a judge. All boss's orders potentially into. Oh no, we do. Yeah, we do see the judge. So we know that Drapion now has
to be. Pedro, yes, out of politeness and out of fun and friendliness, he did show the cards as he was making that tough decision. You know, it kind of helps the opponent understand why that decision took so long, but it also very much revealed, I have a Drapion in my hand. You should judge.
Yeah. And like you said, we mentioned how good Judge is at disrupting Lost Box decks. Let's see what Pedro... Oh, Pedro got a very good hand off that Judge, actually, all things considered. Let's see what Dario has. Still on the Path to the Peak lock, and you probably want to, if you can, keep Path to the Peak up, because it makes Pedro jump through more hoops if he wants to use that Drapion.
Interesting scenario here. Pedro has a Colress in hand, but ideally will want to try and set up the Drapion boss play here. So that Colress would be counterproductive towards that boss, but equally, you've got a lot of turns to play with here, so maybe Colress at this stage will thin out the deck enough that increases the odds of that play. But now that there's a Mew sat in the active spot, that Colress could be the option.
Yeah, so let's see what Pedro does. Does have a fair few Path to the Peak outs. You know, Lost Vacuum still in deck, the Stadium is still in deck. Oh, there's a Beach Court and a Magma Basin, actually. Well, I guess Magma Basin has no use if Radiant Charizard's in the...
That was the thought process. It was like, well, that's not useful anymore. But then also, wait, that's useful for the Path to the Peak. So maybe both stadiums stay, but then there's also some other good cards in there.
Wow, Roxanne having to bite the dust there as well. These are some real tough decisions. And Psych Energy, Pedro does play 4 of those.
In the discard.
2 in the discard as well, so that means 1 available, actually. It could be
There might be another one in the lost zone there early on. I'm not quite sure.
Oh, yeah, at the top.
But we got a Stadium and a Drapion that turn. So this will be that first knockout on the Mew VMAX. And then this is where we might see that, that counter knockout into a Echoing Horn knockout again. That's the classic route at the end. So lots to think about here for Dario afterwards. Yeah, it does seem to be 2 Psychic and a Fire in that lost zone.
Oh, I think the Echoing Horn has been sent to the lost zone, so we won't be seeing the Echoing Horn play.
But the Echoing Horn for the Mew VMAX player to get the Drapion back out.
Oh, sorry, you meant the other. Oh, I apologise. Yes, you are correct. Yeah, that's a good point. It does open up the door for that. You are correct. But that's the scary thing about Drapion, is that you're instantly back in the game now, as Pedro is pole vaulted into the lead, at least via prize cards. And let's see what Dario will want to do here. Probably just KO plus path to the peak would be nice. Maybe even a Roxanne actually does play that, so that would be advantageous as well.
Well, the dream scenario after you've been hit by a Drapion as a Mew VMAX player is Roxanne, path, and set up for the future. That's what you want to see. And at this stage, by putting a Genesect down, Psychic Leap route is probably not going to be viable, but realistically, you've got a clock now. You have to get that Drapion knockout and then get it back out and knock it out again.
Yeah, that's the sort of, like I said, double-edged sort of playing Drapion against Mew. That a lot of them do play access to Echoing Horn, and it can be hard off the back of a Roxanne for the Lost Box player to fill their bench. So that means Echoing Horn will be live. There we do see a Mew VMAX come down for Dario, thinning the deck so you can try and draw more cards. And I don't think we've seen Roxanne yet. I think, was it? Trying to see.
Don't think we have.
So Roxanne should still be in deck. He does play 4 copies of Path to the Peak. I think we've seen 1, so 3 copies there as well. This could be a very important turn, Mike.
Oh, it always is. The Drapion turn is the scariest turn for every Mew VMAX player. You have to deal with it. You can't leave it in play. So what's the game plan there? There's the Choice Belt, which is the easiest damage modifier to get the knockout.
Yep.
That's the first step done.
Roxanne's in hand already. Oh my goodness, that nice rainbow rare one. I've always found it so unfair as a Mew VMAX player that Drapion can one-shot my 3 prize Pokemon, right? Then I have to find a modifier. Like, are you being serious? I have to find a modifier, and I just got KO'd for no energy. Come on.
It's all right, Shay. It's all right. Mew has been doing well enough that I don't think it's their biggest problem right now.
Yeah, it is when I play. I'm not very good, so.
There we go. The Roxanne being played, and Pedro smiling. Yeah, you did the thing. This is the strategy. That deck looking reasonably thick there for Pedro. He has done a lot of thinning. You can see the discard pile in the lost zone, 10 in the lost zone and about 15 in the discard. So there's probably about, say, 10 to 15 cards left in deck. So we'll see what happens here for Pedro.
All right, big turn here. Let's see, will Pedro reveal? Nope. To the bottom, so you don't give away any reactions. After player wants, why do you do that? So you don't give away any reactions to what you've got. Right, let's see what Dario has here. Still need to find a path to the peak in an ideal circumstance. Still has 3 Fusion Strike systems to go. Probably fails that.
3 path in there. Yep,
yeah,
3 path in there.
A nice gold one.
Lovely stuff. So got to find that path now. And the challenging thing post-Roxanne for a Mew player is there's often a lot of cards that can clog up your hand. You know, VIP pass, Nest Balls,
both
supporters.
In that hand,
yeah, so you've got to find a way to declog. And if there's no Ultra Balls available, it can be quite tricky.
Yeah, the sort of Mew VMAX in this format compared to last format where you had Quick Balls to thin the hand as well. It's a massive difference, like you said. Like being able, sometimes, you know, drawing 6, if there are 4 of them are unplayable, you are stuck, essentially. And Dario does need to try and navigate out of this to see what a lost vac. You want to hold on to that, though, realistically, but might not have a choice.
We'll see how this pans out, but yeah, you really have to get that path to the peak now. So battle VIP pass, what was the target?
Yeah, what was the target off that lost vacuum then? Sorry.
What was the target off the lost vacuum? Just got
probably the Magma Basin, I would imagine.
Oh, yes, sorry. You know, the Magma Basin there was an easy target. It would have been pumped with the path anyway.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, just at this stage, just thinking 5 steps ahead, as you do, don't you, when you're in this scenario, you have to think ahead a little bit more. Nothing, some playables there, but nothing too much to worry about. There was a switch card which could be played with a retreat switch.
Yep, you can do that. Retreat switch card. Switch card only lets you switch basic Pokemon. One downside to it, and heals 30 as well. But it only works for that, so you have to do switch card back into your Mew V.
You see there Pedro's reaction to seeing the switch card played. It's like, okay, What else do you have? I also have a Mawile. So let's see if the energy is all gone.
Ooh, that is a good point, actually. What have we got? Ooh, still no path to the peak. Oh, my goodness.
There is a lost vacuum, so you can get rid of some stuff. You see all those supporters in hand.
Yeah.
They do clog up the hand.
This is what I was saying earlier. Cards that you can't insta-play are the worst cards in Mew in this exact scenario. So now I have to see a Forest Hill Stone, I imagine, getting sent to the Lost Zone there. Yep, and this is a big, what, 2 cards now, is it?
3 path in that deck. Surely it comes out of these 2 cards.
Hey,
There it is.
there we go. There's one path to the peak. You know, law of averages, one of them will show up eventually. So that was the ideal turn there for Dario, taking 2 prize cards, going down to 2 prize cards. What has Pedro got? A Lucha Beach Court.
Okay, Beach Court gives an extra flower selecting and a path bump. So
It does.
Clara will do it. And there's going to be a few flower selectings here. Do we see the Clara? Poker gear. Poker gear for
Oh my
Clara.
goodness. Here we go, folks. It's all heating up here. Pedro, 1 attack away from winning. Just needs to find Clara to find the Drapion. Already has the path to the peak replacement, like you said, Mike. Oh my goodness gracious.
So Beach Court into the Lost Zone there. Doesn't need that right now. So it's going to do the poker gear for the Clara.
Here we go.
There are 3
There's
in
the
the
Clara.
deck. Surely he gets it,
Oh my goodness.
And the Beach Court comes through. Drapion to the bench. Switches in. UV Max knockout. Pedro takes game 1.
Wow, and there is the power of Drapion V. And it's interesting because remember back in the day, Disruption Mew builds would play Lost City to sort of stop the Drapion coming back, but now opting for a full path to the peak build, which in most circumstances is good. Unless you're playing against Pedro Torres, apparently, where you get the Beach Court and the Poker Gear. And that's what we said earlier. The strengths of playing Sables are is that you can fit in cards like Poker Gear to help in that exact scenario. Like, let's actually break down what happened there. Dario gave Pedro a 2-card hand, and Pedro needed to find Clara and a Stadium out. What did he do? Clara, Stadium out.
And also found the Stadium out straight away, which was great because it could have given access to another flower selecting if needed. A lovely little start there for Pedro. Had that real tough decision. Drapion or Charizard. Went with the Drapion, and you saw exactly why there at the end. But, you know, that was a classic matchup between the 2. The Mew really trying to disrupt, and it just didn't disrupt enough for the Lost Box to come through. So Pedro winning that first game, and you could see on his face, he did not feel like that was in his favor towards the end. It was a relief. I got out of that Roxanne.
Yeah, definitely Pedro was back against the wall there. That could have got out of hand rather quick. Dario did everything right. Roxanne, Path, KOs, hunting for that Echoing Horn as well. But, you know, that's the power of the Poker Gear. Clara's an amazing card. It's straight back. You're attacking for free, taking 3 prize cards. And now Pedro 1 win away from his spot in top 8, all to play for.
Yeah, a lot of great thinning as well from Pedro. Had the 3 Comfey out and was able to get through a lot of the deck. There was also some early choruses that were huge to get through as much of the deck. Maintaining all the Stadium outs and the 3 Clara, I believe, were all still out of the Lost Zone. And that's the tough thing. Sometimes early on, you have to get a Clara into the Lost Zone because it's an early card you don't want.
Yeah.
If you have to flower select it against another card, and that's why they play 3. But in that case, I think there were 2 in the deck, maybe 1 prize. I'm not quite sure. But still, there was plenty of ways for Pedro to get that at the end there. And we saw how good the Poker Gear was as well.
Yeah, the Poker Gear was so clutch. And that's something that, like, the other Lost Box decks, you know, like a Cryoga or Mirage Gate or Turbo, just haven't got the room for. And sometimes, a lot of the time, you just need a Clara in these Lost Box decks. It gets you back Sableye energy, gets you back Drapion as well. Speaking of Clara, 1's in the prize cards there. She's having a game off that one. But yeah, strong supporter, and Poker Gear has just helped you grab it.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Clara right at the top. The Roxanne will be potentially an option, but most likely won't be the case for Lost Box. Roxanne's more of the Mew V Max's supporter of choice.
Yeah.
There is 2 bosses as well in the list for Pedro. Great at the end of the game with the Charizard. And you see a card there in his hand that's one that's fun to talk about here. And that's that Defiance band. We have seen some versions of the Charizard Sableye build that only play Defiance Band. Why would this deck want to play that card?
Well, you're normally on the back foot as a Lost Box Sablezard player. You're never really ahead on the prize race. What Defiance Band does, it lets your Charizard hit for 280 damage into anything, irrespective of whether it's a V or EX. So if you hit it into a Gardevoir after a couple Psychic Embraces, it means your Combustion Blast can take that KO. And against everything else, it gets your Cramorant even getting to 140, which knocks out Brainwave as well. It's a very good, interesting card for sure.
Yeah, we've seen Cleansing Gloves come in place of Choice Belts or alongside Choice Belts. and that's because Choice Belt doesn't work into that Gardevoir X. And there's also some other interesting cards here and there that you might not even think about, so it gives you that advantage against the unknown, where it can hit into anything. It can also be quite useful in, say, a Lost Box Mirror. If you were, having to use a Cramorant at some point, you need to get just above the 110. Maybe you're knocking out a Snorlax or something.
Okay, yeah.
You could not necessarily a Snorlax, but you like those kinds of
that
Pokemon.
Extra HP, yeah.
Yeah, those extra HP gets a bit more damage on those. I'm trying to think if there's some particular scenarios where that could be the case, but maybe even a Scratch from a Sableye.
Guess another big one would be Cramorant into Cresselia.
Cramorant to Cresselia, yeah.
That's a big
or into Deoxys in the fusion build.
Or Deoxys, yeah. So Defiance Band being plus 30 if you're behind
There you go. Thanks for getting me some examples, Shay, because I was struggling for that. Put two brain cells together and you might get an answer.
How many casts does it take to work out while we're playing Defiance Band, everyone? The answer's 2, apparently.
Right, so game 2 here. Dario going first again. Let's see if they can get as good a setup as last time, but this time they want to hope those disruptions are a little bit more effective.
Yeah, I guess it's just law of averages sometimes, if you're playing Mew VMAX for a total of, what's that, 13 round? No, it's not, 15 rounds, sorry. Sometimes the disruption will work. Hopefully, most of the time, I imagine if you won 9 rounds out of them, they will be, but sometimes it won't. So, and that's the luck of the draw sometimes. They will draw out of it, other times they won't.
Yeah, here in round 14, we're going to see whether either of these players can get their win and in game. This is a big game for both of them to make top 8. A draw is not great. They don't want to see a draw. It might get them some points. I'm sure the points will be useful, in particular for Dario, because I think this is one of his higher finishes no matter what, where Pedro's had some big finishes this season. But still, top 16, top 32s at these special events is still a lot of points. But realistically, both of them right now are looking to make their way into that top 8, as Dario's going to use a Forest Seal Stone straight away.
Was that from a Path to the Peak? Is that what that Star Alchemy just taken, or took, I should say?
We'll see. I mean, it goes straight to the hand. You don't have to reveal the Forest Seal Stone, so we'll find out in a second what that was from Dario, because if it's turn 1, it's almost definitely going to be played instantly here.
Yes, 100%. I remember when I first saw Forest Seal Stone in Mew, I thought, it's going to be so good. You can grab power tablets, and most of the time you just get your Battle VIP pass. And I think it was Path to the Peak. That's interesting, because that means this Pidgeot now cannot go to the bench and Vanishing Wings. You have to have a staging replacement, so a switch and that as well, which is something worth noting, because you cannot Vanishing Wings from the active of that Pidgeot.
Yeah, nice idea here, just to try and disrupt early on. There is the Drapion in deck. Well, the most important cards to check to see if it's available for Pedro. We'll be getting it down straight away. Interesting. So we see the Drapion benched instantly here.
Oh, we're going to see a turn 1 Drapion. I've just felt, because if you can switch, attach 1 energy. How many Mew did Dario get in play?
Is that just the...
there's 2 Mew. Okay.
Okay.
So maybe that's what the Path for the Peak was for, actually, trying to defend against a turn 1 Drapion.
I don't think this is the common route. I mean, knowing that there's no Lost City, that turn 1 Drapion becomes a little bit more effective, because you're not too worried about it going into the discard. And with the Charizard as well, you also have the ability to just go the 2-2-2 route.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Yes, you can just take this KO now, go down to 4 prize cards, and just try and weave in escape ropes on Genesect with Charizard to close out the game. It's a perfectly fine map. Or Sableye can get you 2 prize cards as well. And the turn 1 Drapion, not something you see every day, but effective.
It's also going to be 1 less fusion Pokemon for the Fusion Strike system, so it could completely thwart Dario's draw power, as we see that Mew knocked out. Early Drapion V here from Pedro. Very creative.
And here's what I was saying earlier. Dario now has to find a VMAX, an energy, and a modifier. There's the modifier at least. Now to find VMAX plus energy. Otherwise, this Drapion can attack again. Well, as it stands now, we need 1 basic energy, actually, because Wild Style reduces the energy cost for each Fusion Strike, Rapid Strike, or Single Strike Pokemon your opponent has in play. So there's 3. Dynamic Tail costs 4 energy in total, so would need 1 energy to attack.
We were just momentarily ago talking about how the Charizard Sableye build is normally coming from behind, and Pedro's putting that pressure on instantly. Not just the 1 card in the Lost Zone there, because the Lost Vacuum was used to bump the Path to the Peak. And now we're seeing Pedro just going straight into that, leaning into that Drapion strategy.
Yeah, normally Mew is the most aggressive deck in format. When you get a turn one, you can sort that out yourself on the cutting. And that's why it's kind of fitting that we saw the Defiance ban get sent to the Lost Zone, because Pedro's like, well, I ain't going to be behind this game, so let me put that in the Lost Zone. Oh my goodness! Oh, whoa, what's going on there? So, yeah, he can draw one because he played the... Yeah, that's perfectly fine. So, I think that was a cram. This is actually incredibly important, Pedro. Here we go.
It's a 3.
Fusion strike system for 2. This could decide who gets into top 8. There's no Mew VMAX there.
That's it. Surely that's it.
You have to retreat and protect the Mew. At least force the energy off Pedro. You have to.
Pedro is sitting here waiting to see what those 2 cards were. I think one of them was a Mew, but that's not an attack. The Drapion will remain.
Does Pedro have a basic energy? Not yet, actually. As a skate rope, that goes into a Geneset. Do we see a basic energy in switch card? We do.
There's a basic energy.
Oh my goodness. Do we have a way out the active for this Comfey, though, actually? Not immediately, I think. I see Roxanne, a VIP Battle Pass on the Charizard, so Dario might get away with it this turn, I think.
We'll see that Judge becoming very effective here. Pedro still in a very strong position. Not many cards to play with for Dario. Doesn't have a huge amount of draw out of that hand. So this could be a little bit of a pass from Pedro.
Oh, yes, Dario gets away with it, and it's back over to Dario. Gets another Mew. So now
that Mew in hand, cleverly not played down to make the Drapion have to have an energy to attack.
Yes, exactly. Forced the energy. Here we see another Judge. Judge is firing off in a court of law here, apparently. The game is being decided on whoever Judge treats fairer. And I loved Pedro's face that time. He's thinking, oh, I'm so close to closing this out, but not quite.
That Cram-O-Matic was so big.
It was.
Not only did it thin the hand, but it would have got access to that Mew VMAX for the attack. You know, those kind of turns can change a tournament for players, and realistically, Mew VMAX doesn't rely on those heads all the time, but it can be a huge power spike in their game plan. This time, we're going to slow it down a bit here and see that, I mean, that Drapion's still in play.
It is, it's still vulnerable.
2 power tablets were used as well.
Yeah, 2 power tablets are gone. That's something you really have to keep note of here, actually, is that 2 power tablets have gone. Still no Mew VMAX, actually. What's going on here? Where are these Mew VMAX at? They're too scared.
Well, it's one of the prizes, and there's 2 Featherball in those prizes, so, and an Ultra Ball. So the outs to Mew VMAX are very much prized. So we'll see whether can find something off of this particular hand here. There was a power tablet there, but I don't think the Gust on the Drapion's possible with the Judge being played. There is a Boss Orders in hand, but that'll have to be next turn. So now we're going to have to think about getting rid of this Comfey, but that just doesn't help the route to victory here, because Drapion will just counter knockout so quickly.
Yeah, and it's like you said, really strange to see the Lost Box player applying all the pressure, and like you said, prizing 3 Ball Search cards and a Mew VMAX. That's so many limited outs, and we have, what, 1 Fusion Strike system left, I believe, but...
One as well as that?
One.
I mean, just deciding whether the Lost Vacuum's worth it at this stage to thin a bit more. I think it has to.
I think you have to. You think you have to. Now that the Drapion is live with no basic energy, you kind of have to try and find a VMAX, I think.
And a lot of people might be looking at that thinking, obviously the VIP pass is the one to go, but VIP pass being active with the Cram-O-Matic, so sometimes actually another card might be better.
And that's sometimes that's the weird thing about Mew VMAX. Sometimes it's advantageous to hold on to VIP Battle Pass past turn 1 because it isn't activated for those Cram-O-Matics, like you said.
You just saw the return from Dario there being like, my tough decision right now is between these 2. I had a tough decision like yours in the last game, and just Pedro helping him out. This is tense right now. These players are exhausted. There's a lot on the line. They're thinking hard. They're thinking 3 steps ahead.
VMAX.
And there we go. That's the VMAX. And that's the retreat out as well. So we're going to see the Psychic Leap maybe here?
I think he has the Path to the Peak in hand. Yeah, so you see the Path to the Peak. Pedro's like, come on. To be fair, Pedro, can't keep shaking it. You've been jumping through all these hoops that Dario's been setting, so here we go. Does Pedro have a Stadium? Ooh, see a switch car?
Oh, interesting now with that Cramorant having the 60 damage from the Drapion's negative effect, that is now in range of a Psychic Leap as well. So if an attack from the Cramorant here happens, we could see that. But now we're working out, will the Drapion be able to get a knockout here? Is that going to be possible?
Good golly gracious, could you imagine if it was? Like, oh, speaking of that damage, switch card does actually put it out of range. Oh,
Not ideal.
Not the greatest.
Not ideal.
Oh, those flowers aren't the nicest that Pedro's been selecting so far, this game at least. And let's see, so we have to start doing Comfey and start trying to retreat. Well, the good thing is about this scenario is that at least Pedro, unless boss's orders come out, is only giving up one prize card at a time. So does have time to look at loving the showmanship here from our players.
Having fun. It's key to have fun at this stage. Both these guys have been playing Pokemon a while, and they are enjoying the game. You see the chorus there. Again, it's fingers crossed galore across the board. Both players hoping the outs are not found.
Stadium switch here is no stadium.
Another chance for a Comfey, though, I think, in that.
Yes. We're getting dangerously close there. Pedro's keeping us on the edge of our seat.
What a hand he has there as well.
yeah. I bet Pedro's wishing he plays Chromatic at this point. Oh dear. Right, so we see a basic energy getting sent to Lost Zone via Chorus Experiment, and then one more card. All of them are kind of good, actually.
I wonder if the Charizard might go again.
Maybe. I mean, you've already taken 2 prize cards already. You probably had a chance to scout the list so you know that Lost City is not going to come around, so Drapion will always be live. Maybe it does.
I mean, the Nest Ball switch card's going to allow for another flower selecting here, so has to keep those. Let's see what happens off of this flower selecting. Convey comes out. Needs to find a stadium. Potentially a beach court would be ideal because that would allow for the switch into the Drapion. Maybe even an escape rope could be useful.
Yeah, I mean, Wild's Dynamic Tail would always take 2 prize cards here. It carries a Genesect as well. You would like to try and remove the threat of a Mew VMAX. Take 3 prize cards is always nice, but
it's only one more flower selecting, so it has to be a stadium, right?
Yes, it's got to be.
Has to be exactly beach.
Exactly beach court, I believe. Okay, big flower selecting here. Comfey. Or not Comfey actually. Maybe. Oh no, maybe he didn't have any switching cards left or opted not to.
Oh, he's just passing. That makes sense. You know, reset allow for the next turn. It would have been a reach. I mean, that's a thick old deck to just say, I'm going to get beach court off this next flower selecting. So rather than reaching and using up a switch out, accepting they'll get a few more opportunities next turn.
And over to Dario. You'd love to try and see a boss's orders here to start pole vaulting himself back into this game. But we know he had to Lost Zone 1 already via Lost Vacuum last turn. So it does play 3 copies of boss's orders in total. So hopefully it shouldn't be too hard. But then you kind of want to leave the path to the peak out as well, because that turns off wild style ability on Drapion. So a few interesting wrinkles here to navigate, Mike.
Yeah, just a little bit of a slowdown at this stage.
Yeah, it's definitely.
We had that fiery start with the Drapion, but not now. The players are recognizing there's going to be a little bit more longevity to this game. Pedro's game plan of Drapion all the way through to the end is not going to be as easy as first thought. Some nice instant playables here, good to see.
Yeah, not too bad. I do have another path to the peak, actually, so that's nice. You can attach those choice belts, so you can draw some cards. Trying to debate whether you would play that escape rope or not. Did we see it? Did the Mew Techno Blast last turn, or was it anything else?
I think it might have been a Psychic Leap with a power tablet, but right. I mean, could have announced Techno Blast. I'm pretty sure there was a power tablet used, so Psychic Leap would have been optimal.
Let's see.
We'll see here. I mean, that hand was great for thinning down cards.
It was, yeah. They've got them all at the hand, so you can draw more. Here we do see the escape rope. Now, I imagine Pedro probably promotes Radzard or Cramorant. And yeah, looks like we're going to see Cramorant. Into the Mew V. It's always nice that we'll have 3 retreat costs. One of the many good things about Mew V. Here we go, Fusion Strike System for 5.
Okay, so some more playables there. And a Chromatic and VIP pass, that could be quite useful.
And Ultra Ball. We love an Ultra Ball Mew V, Matt, let me tell you that. you get the Ultra Ball, you're laughing. We could see a Cram flip here. We go, big flip.
There we go.
6.
Only fair. Only fair.
Law of averages. Law of averages. Okay, so if you're Dario, are you finding boss here? We've already got the choice belts, which is nice. So boss path, I believe, would be the way to go.
And that would rely on the classic stadium bounce plus Clara for Pedro.
Yes. Again, ask those questions. I mean, Pedro managed to do it in game 1. Was saying, could you do it again? Hopefully not.
And at that point, it's still 2 knockouts required for Pedro.
Yes.
But if you get the knockout, that would then put the Charizard in range of attacking with a Magma Basin.
It would. It would. We'd have to find the Magma Basin for that, though, because obviously if Path to the Peak was around, Excited Heart would be turned off. But you are correct. Magma Basin would be live there for Charizard. Did that Combustion Blast 250 damage for as little as 1 energy? That is a ridiculous number, all things considered.
Can't attack during your next turn, though.
Nope, nope. Which is good. One of the balancing factors for Radiant Charizard. There's not many of them, but that is one of them for sure.
So we'll see that deck is looking quite thin there for Dario. So done a good job of getting through it. Has meant to use a lot of resources up. So Escape Rope, Power Tablet, some of these useful cards that could come in. Like right now, can't do a Psychic Leap realistically off that Crown Rank. Could go for something like a Max Miracle, but is concerned, needs to find a way to get that Drapion out of play. Remember there was a boss's orders that was sent to the Lost Zone earlier.
Yeah.
There is 3 boss in the list, which is a good amount, and should be able to find them here. So a boss order onto that Drapion would leave 3 prizes remaining for Dario, so still 2 knockouts after that point.
I think 1 boss's orders has been discarded, because when Dario was picking his Chromatic target, I only saw 1 in there. Does play a copy of Power Pad, though. So we'll sure for that. Anyway, Fusion Strike System for 4. I make this one. Oh, okay. No boss.
What did he get off the Chromatic? That's the question, though.
Sure. Was it the Ultra Ball? Oh, no, there is a boss in. Oh, a boss in hand, I should say. I apologize. Maybe.
I think.
Yeah, it must have been. So there's the boss. So we see Dario doing everything he can do, basically. Getting rid of the Drapion. Probably putting down Path to the Peak as well, so it's not going to be as easy to use with Clara. There is Path to the Peak, turning off all rule box abilities. Choice Belt is the modifier, Techno Blast KO.
Okay, so this is the big turn for Pedro. 2 different routes will emerge at this point. You have the route with Charizard taking knockouts on the bench Genesect or Mew.
Yep.
Or you have the other route where a Clara gets the Flower Sect, and there's a boss's orders, so that opens up the Magma Basin route a little bit more.
It does. The Magma Base would be a really good, because actually it was the Path to the Peak as well.
Clara in hand.
Clara in hand. All the options to Pedro. Just needs to get rid of the stadium for these options to work, though.
Yeah, well, whichever stadium bounce is attained. I guess the Magma Basin route would be nicer at this stage, because it would leave the Drapion available for the final attack.
But the boss has always got sent to the Lost Zone now, actually.
Okay.
Okay, Pedro's saying, well, I'm just going to attack through the active then. Echoing Horn. Okay, that's got sent to Lost Zone as well. Interesting card, but not quite. What is Pedro working up with? I think is Pedro just really just going for that stadium? He must be, I think.
Must be going for the stadium Drapion route and just going for 2 more knockouts, with Drapion being the more optimized route.
Yeah, I believe that looks like that's going to be the case. Dario has to promote a Pokemon off the Escape Rope. Interesting decision. Going to go for the UV.
Okay, so the Mew V now opens up the potential for a Charizard attack here with a Magma Basin.
It does straight into the active, you are correct, but it doesn't look like Pedro can get to a stadium card. There's none in hand, I believe.
Okay.
And there's none of the flowers selecting, so what's Pedro's backup plan here?
I guess, can Clara the Drapion back into the hand so it's not there for an Echoing Horn play?
True. That is definitely an option.
Would open up things like Nest Balls.
Yeah, that hand isn't great for Pedro. I think there's much you can do there. Just the Clara on the Escape Rope as the only playable cards. I guess the Escape Rope allows you to maybe hit with a Spit innocently into whatever Dario promotes, but that is literally it.
Ooh. Doesn't want to put into the Mew V Max in case the Drapion plays there, maybe.
That's it.
There we go. Which one do you put up? That's the question.
Dario's gone for the one with the Choice Belt as well.
Interesting.
And then we're probably going to see a Spit innocently here for 110. So there we go. The questions that Dario asked Pedro, at least for this turn, Pedro cannot answer, at least immediately. Here we do see the Clara, like you said, rescuing that Drapion V and a Fire Energy. We could even see the Fire Energy get attached to it, just to make that Combustion Blast a bit more of a threat later on.
Yeah, we'll see. There it is. Fire Energy down. And then a 110 from the Spit innocently. Not the perfect turn for Pedro, but a safe one now. So has another turn in favor because there is no V Pokemon in play, no V Pokemon in the discard pile to Echoing Horn. So it does mean that Pedro can play the single prize approach until that final turn where Drapion is needed.
Yeah, you're 100% correct in that scenario. And let's see what Dario does here. We saw the Escape Ropes that will reset any Techno Blast, so all these new VMAX can attack. Let's see what's Dario got in his hand. I think there was one lost vacuum, but you might almost want to just keep that path to the peak there and save yourself having to try and find another one. Just keep it there, like, make that Drapion as hard as possible.
I mean, the deck is pretty thin at this stage as well, so not many cards left to draw into, so it doesn't need to worry about thinning anymore. With the Cramorant healing some damage earlier from that switch card, it does make the Psychic Leap that little bit harder to do. Requires a damage modifier on top of the typical Psychic Leap damage. We might be thinking about that at this stage.
There we see an escape rope from Dario into a Comfey, which I think Pedro was trying to preserve, so he has more dig potential. Next turn, try and find the stadium. That's what Pedro is really after here. And there it looks like we see Max Miracle, as I make that up from lip reading there. Max Miracle, 110 damage. And Dario has snuck his way down to 2 prize cards, Mike. This game's getting close.
Yeah, we need that stadium bounce at this stage for the Drapion to attack, but you can't really attack at this point. You need the boss's orders into that Charizard attack onto the bench Mew VMAX or a bench Genesect. Has to be something to set up the Drapion final turn. There was one boss sent into the Lost Zone. The other boss will be in that deck somewhere because there are 2 in Pedro's list.
Okay, there we see a Skate Rope. We'll see a Pokegear as well, so we might see the Pokegear come up clutch. Pedro does play 1 copy of Raihan.
Skate Rope could even be enough at this stage as well.
Yeah, as long as you can take 2 prize cards this turn, you're in a very advantageous position. There is the Escape Rope.
Okay.
Dario thinking, okay, right, that's a good card in this scenario. Remember, Dario does have to promote first of a Skate Rope. And
any knockout is good here. The Mew VMAX,
yep.
1 prize left, that's fine. Has to be 2 knockouts no matter what, and the Drapion can knock out everything on the board at this stage as long as there's no stadium in play. And we know there's so many stadiums there for Pedro.
Well, that would be Pedro's last copy of Boss, but he does not mind as it is sent swiftly to the Lost Zone.
Doesn't matter
2
now.
copies of Pokegear. Oh, that was a fail. Wow, that's not something you see every day. 7-card deck defense supporter. Normally you hit them, but not this time. Pedro does have 1 more though.
Yeah, what's he trying to get out here? Maybe, is it the Clara? No, or the Chorus Experiment just to thin the deck a bit?
I think Raihan or Roxanne, just to try and find a stage. And Raihan guarantees it. Roxanne is close to guaranteeing it. Well, I mean, it's not. It just depends if you draw into it, I guess.
Oh, those 3 Battle VIP passes are just nasty. Yeah. For Pedro. You never want to see those.
Yeah. Get him out, get him out. So it looks like you have to take the Roxanne here, right? I mean, I think that was... Well, oh, no, it goes for the Colrus. Okay. I guess the sort of probabilities if you shuffle in 3 Battle VIP passes with a thin deck, maybe you just draw back into them off the Roxanne. I guess with Colrus, you're guaranteed to see at least 5 cards. New cards, I should say, as well. Right, here we go. Chorus Experiment, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stadium here would be mega impactful as well.
There's going to be at least 1 in there, surely.
I don't think there is.
No way.
I don't think there is. I think that's a miss. Oh, my goodness.
It might be. I mean, he does need that stadium. Where is it?
Where are they? He plays 3. That's quite high for Lost Box number 3.
How's he not found a stadium here?
What's going on? Dario's path to the peak. Pedro is stuck on that path to the peak. Unfortunately, Charizard unable to attack Drapion that he's been holding for so long. Unable to attack. They was maybe debating whether to attach retreat. And ooh.
Oh, so it has to do that with the Forest Seal Stone.
Of course. I forgot about Forest Seal Stone onto
I mean, it has to do it, but it's not ideal because it puts the Drapion in play, so that sets up a potential game for Dario.
But Dario has a choice belt on that bench Mew VMAX, right?
He does. Both Mew VMAX have a choice belt on, so a boss's orders for game, but there's 1 boss in the discard pile. Yeah. 1 has been sent to the Lost Zone. It's going to be an interesting one here.
Yeah, so you have to take a stadium off this. So that means, like you said, you can't attack with the Drapion here because Dario...
There's boss in hand, no?
I think
Dario?
I think he played it last turn to KO Comfey, right? I believe.
Was that the Escape Rope? I can't remember. Is that a boss?
What's that 3rd card there? That could be a boss.
I think that might be a boss.
Oh, no, you're right. It might have been an escape. I think you're right, actually. It was the Escape Rope last turn. So here we see, well, we'll find out very quick now. Speaking of time, let's see.
It might have been a Lost Vacuum. I can't remember. You guys are probably screaming at us right now, telling us whether it was a boss or an Escape Rope. So if that's the case, might need to go through the deck and find the PAL pad. I think that's just Pedro recognizing the boss's orders are it's a lost vacuum.
Yeah, no, there is no boss there.
There's
the PAL pad. Oh my goodness.
Surely he draws into it with all these cards. The PAL pad there. I think Pedro hoping that the PAL pad might be prized. Both boss going to go back into the deck. Loads of draw here.
Wow, so PAL pad shuffling in 2 bosses orders. Dario, can he draw back into any of them? Already has the choice belt, so won't need to find a modifier to carry that Drapion on the bench. And then he will tie this up at a 1-1 here if he does. Has plenty of cards to play actually as well.
Yeah, it has the feather ball there. Can thin that. The lost vacuum can thin a card too. So plenty of thinning here. Almost guaranteed that Dario gets to the bottom of that deck.
Ooh, okay, oh, that's playing the feather ball there. I was confused as to what's going on. I'm guessing he's playing the feather ball.
There's still quite a lot of deck there.
There is.
It should be almost guaranteed. It's just whether you go into all those clunky cards that can't be played.
Yeah, it just depends on what order you draw those cards into. Like, sure, the deck's thin, but that's all. I think there's a Roxanne in there. If there's any VIP Battle Pass still knocking about, that can clog you up. And I think Dario's only drawing 3, so it's not like the craziest amount as well. You could play like Lost Vacuum now.
Okay, there we go.
That gets rid of Mew VMAX. Oh, no. Yeah, we'll get rid of Mew VMAX, but also removes the Basin. No, it was the Mew VMAX, so you can have a Crammerman out, I think. Crammerman out, I should say. Well, here we go. Any of the boss's orders? No.
There's ways to thin the deck still.
There is. Echoing Horns is actually live, to be fair, so you can play that. Lost Vacuums and out. Well, a card you can play, I should say.
Yeah, so the Forest Seal Stone can be played down. The Lost Vacuum can thin another card because there's enough tools in play to do so. Okay, let's see. Forest Seal Stone. Down it goes. Echoing Horn played. Get anything from the discard pile. Doesn't matter what it is. It's just to thin the cards. Play the Lost Vacuum. Surely this is going to thin enough here. Roxanne.
Yeah,
and that Forest Seal Stone. Another 4.
Oh, is that the whole deck?
Almost.
Oh, no,
There's 2 cards left. Surely something in here is a boss.
There's a boss.
And there was a Crammermatic there.
There's the boss.
It was guaranteed. And it's going to be 1-1 here. The players draw in their final round. But the final winner there, Dario, coming through the Mew VMAX, boss on the final stage.
Yeah, and what a game. That's a really hard matchup for Mew to navigate. And Dario did that one well. We saw in game 1, Dario asked the questions of Pedro, and Pedro was able to answer them. In game 2, even though Pedro had the Drapion ready and waiting for a lot of time in the game, wasn't able to get rid of the stadium, meaning that Dario was able to take that win there.
So both players will be eliminated from top 8. But that is still a great finish here for points. And I'm sure they'll be satisfied with points, but disappointed at not making top 8. You know, it's always tough when you draw that winning in game.
And that's some of the potential downside or risk to playing any Lost Box deck is that chances are if you win game 1 or you lose game 1, it's very hard to win 2 games in that quick succession there if you are a Lost Box player. Probably Turbo being the only one that can maybe close a game out quick. But all credit there to both players playing it extremely well and at least going home with a good finish and some points, like you said.
Yeah, that's the risk of that early Drapion play by Pedro. I think it was still correct, but you saw how hard it is with the disruption of Mew. When you've got a thick deck, it's really hard to set up the next Drapion attack. Even the Drapion was still in play, and just getting that stadium out after a judge, very tricky. So Pedro drew very well in the first one, apart from a few tougher flower selectings, and in that second one, just couldn't quite close it out.
Yeah, no, we could all take our minds back to the flower selected with the Radiant Charizard and Drapion, thinking, oh my goodness, these are my 2 attackers, my favorite attackers, and I have to send one of them permanently away from this game. It's always a pleasure watching Pedro play, one of Europe's premier players, and it's always nice to see him play, right?
Well, that's it for the Swiss stage.
That is.
Top 8 will be coming up shortly, but I hope you guys have enjoyed the coverage so far. We're going to have a little bit of time to sort things out with the players, so we'll keep you entertained in the meantime. But for now, that's the end of the Swiss. Top 8 coming soon.